So let me introduce our moderator. I've got a script here, but I did chat with him, and he's a person after my own heart. There are not a lot of us. So I grew up, my parents took us to some national parks, and no one at school had been to those national parks or knew what I was talking about, so I thought I was kind of odd. People don't do that from Louisiana a lot, but he and I have been to lots of the national parks in the country together, and he loves to hike. So and do I. But I'm excited to introduce Steve DeHaan, who is President and CEO of International Warehouse Logistics Association and co-founder of today's event. Provides members warehousing, fulfillment, inventory, supply chain management, transportation, and a broad range of manufacturing and value-adding services in North America. Steve manages the association's operations, works with leadership to establish strategic direction, oversees the government affairs efforts, and has 39 years of experience in association management and managing nonprofit roles. His last 8 years were with IWLA. So please welcome Steve DeHaan.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about IWLA before we start the panel discussion. And just to give you an idea of who we are, we represent third-party logistics warehouses. We've been around since 1891. I have a certificate in the office. It's got a number 42 of it as a founding member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. You have to remember, all these were done back in the days of they went to the meetings via the railroad. In the pictures in the office that we have of the warehouse business was a horse and wagon. 1891, okay? So I just wanted to let you know, our major issue back then was railroad demurrage, and up until October 1, our number one issue in the association was railroad demurrage. We finally got through to the Surface Transportation Board with some rule changes that will help us mitigate some of those demurrage charges. IWLA has 65 members, right in that neighborhood, okay? There's 1,600 third-party logistics warehouse companies in the United States. $81 billion industry. IWLA members do 62% of the $81 billion. Those 360 members out of 1,600 do 62% of the business. Why is that? There's something unique about IWLA. I will tell you that right up front. Our industry grows every single year. IWLA is involved in government affairs, supply chain, indoor source rule. Right now we're getting ready to file a $1 million lawsuit in the indoor source rule in Southern California, doing the fundraising as we speak, okay? Warehouse taxes, every once in a while some state thinks they ought to tax warehouse revenues. The last one was 6% in Pennsylvania. We defeated that. And then just all things federal. We're involved in labor, maritime, trucking, rail, OSHA, safety, shippers, you name it, anything, all things logistic that touch it, we sort of touch all those regulatory agencies. And we try to work with the chairman of the legislative committees that oversee those particular groups. And that's how we try to advance our agenda on the federal level. Education. You know, we got some great education. You know, how to rate and how to make sure that you're getting your right margins. We do an economics and sales course. We do an essentials course where we train some of your middle management into becoming more management oriented, a little bit of legal, a little bit of HR, a little bit of leadership, a little bit of safety, a little bit of ratings, a little bit of sales, a little bit of everything. It's all the essentials that you need to have within the industry. And we try to do that so that the people that work for the 3PL warehouses have a good knowledge of all the other entities within and around them and the things that they have to go through to be successful. And you might say, you do sales and ratings together? And yes, because the salespeople sell it and the raters have to rate it. And they have to get along and have to be on the same page. Otherwise, the customer gets a mixed message. You told me you could do this. Yeah, but it's too expensive, kind of thing. So it's important. Fulfillment, safety and risk. Actually, our safety and risk, the association started an insurance captive 30 years ago. And it's based in the Caymans, and you have to qualify for it, and you have to have a very large premium for it. But they get paid dividends if they don't use the insurance dollars. And so they pay themselves to be safe. And all of us should be thinking in terms of that safety, because it's important, because every time you have a workers' comp issue, you go down by 3 or 4 people. They get nervous, they get pulled off the job, they get everything, you got this, you got 3-4 days for them to come back to work sometimes they're out for weeks. Safety's a big deal to us, really big deal, and mitigating all that risk is really helpful when it comes to OSHA. Technology and operations. I'm going to share a little something here in a little bit about customers, and then we also do legal. We put together standard forms. We have 12 of them. They're standard forms for the industry and their models, and those terms and conditions we publish publicly so that all of our competition has the same terms and conditions, because if you don't put it in your contract, you might become liable for it. So, and all of the lien information, et cetera, that we need for customer products. Our warehouses don't own any product. They're all about throughput. We receive, store, and ship goods for others. That's really what we're all about. And you heard me say this earlier, the best learning from the best and improving everything in the industry. That's what the association's all about. We want to make sure that it's all there. Why would a customer want to consider working with a 3PL or maybe even an IWLA member? Here's some of the things. They're really good at just-in-time. Really good at just-in-time. You know, the first IWLA member I visited, I came in and I saw these big rolls of colored paper and these big bags of glue. What do you think the just-in-time operation was? Post-it notes. They shipped 10 truckloads every day to the Post-it note factory, and they were their just-in-time delivery service, and they were the warehouse behind it. Usually they have multiple customers in the same building. So when you work with that, you get the best of the most demanding customer. Think about that. You don't just get what you want, you get all they have to offer. And they have to offer what everybody else needs in their operations. Computer systems that are just unbelievable. The amount of APIs that are written in the interfaces, because customers have to know what their inventories are, and the inventories are in a 3PL warehouse. Those technology systems are unbelievable. I talked to other people about it in our warehouse management systems. It's just there. Relationships in the industry. Customers get, just like we're doing today, you get to touch other relationships in the industry. It's just really important. That networking session was great, by the way. And most of the time, it'll cost you less than running your own warehouse because it's so much more efficient and effective. 3PLs really don't make any real money unless they really move a lot of goods. So that's really the key to it, keeping it move. If you own your own, a lot of times you're sitting with 50% of your product not moving 50% of the time. So that's just a little primer on who IWLA is, who our members are, what our goals are, etc. But today, let's just talk about discovering business opportunities hidden within your warehouse. And there's lots of things going on, particularly in this particular area, so we want to try to focus some of the things there. And you've met our panel members. We got Robert, Baldridge, and Bonnie Kersch, and Greg Johnson, Director of Business. Hopefully you all have met them somewhere along the line. And I'm just going to get started right here, right now, and a question for Robert. Robert, in general, what business opportunities are available in the warehouse?
Well, thanks for the softball question. So how's it going? Business is smooth. No big changes the last couple of years, I imagine. As we come out of COVID, what's happening? Demand is up. People are down. Demand for space is up, space is down. Your business is growing, and your core competency is making that product, whether it's imported and you value add to it, or if it's produced in your own facility. You need to expand your space and your output. You need to expand your output, and you need new people to do it. And so as you cast around, the shipping department is saying, hey, we need more room. I got more orders, I got a stage, I got to have more stock on hand, I need more room. And your production facility is saying, hey, we need more room. I've got to add a new product line. This is taken off, your salesmen are going crazy, they're offering the customer things we don't have. We've got to ramp up. HR is, you call HR and you say, whistle up some people. I need some quality people who can help. And they're saying, yeah. You read the paper about the labor shortage? And so there are issues in your supply chain, but there are also opportunities. And this is how the supply chain industry can help. First of all, let's take some options. Let's say you need to expand. You need to expand your production. So your production people are looking over the wall at your shipping department and saying, you know, if we just move them out, I could have more room. And the shipping people are saying, if production would just move down the street and bring their product to me, I'd have more room. And so you're saying, should I go out and get a new building? Building costs are going down? Well, no, they're not. They're going way up. And competition for existing space is going way up. But let's say you decide to put up a new building, or to lease a new building, and you need maybe 15,000 square feet, so you get 30. Well, you're paying for 30, whether or not you need it. And the supply chain goes up and down, the supply requirements go up and down. And so if you expand your business, if you expand your footprint, which is a good business decision, you're also expanding your cost. And those costs are fixed. If you lease a building, your cost is fixed. So what's an opportunity there? Well, one opportunity is to outsource, to get with another provider, a warehouse provider in this case. And you say, well, what's the difference? I'm still leasing the building. Well, in fact, you're not, because in our business, you only pay for what you need. So you pay for the pallet. You pay by the square foot that you actually sit on. And so if your inventory goes down, you don't pay for that space. And you say, well, okay, but I'm having to pay someone else to handle the product. And that's correct. If your business picked up, you would have to hire more people to handle your product. But by outsourcing, you're only paying for what you need. Those people that are handling your product are handling somebody else's product when you don't have a shipment going out. So in our business, you're charged an in and out handling charge by the package, by the pound, by the sea weight. And so you only pay for your product. It's the warehouse's problem to have an efficient staff, a trained staff that can handle your product. Well, there's a certain amount of fear involved there. That warehouse is shipping my product. Who's the last one to see your product before it goes to your customer? Well, it's not me. But if you hire somebody new, you have a training to ramp them up, you may be injecting problems of your own. What about inventory management? Do you have an inventory management system? Your third-party logistics provider does. So, and he's got one, and he's used to dealing with other customers. And so he can provide the information you need probably faster than your folks can provide it. So what is the opportunity here? I need to grow. I need to reach new markets. But I want to save on that growth. I don't want to incur fixed costs by growing. I'm having trouble hiring new people. I'm having trouble training the new people. If you outsource to a third-party logistics provider, they take on that core competency of handling your product. That's what they're good at. And your people are freed up to go to production, to make that product, to make the product that you do so well. You're killing it. Your business is growing. And you want to focus on your core competency. So where's the opportunity? Let's say that you've got a good operation and you can fit in that footprint, but you need a little more. And maybe you only need it for part of the year. Maybe we have some customers that do refrigerant gases. When do you need refrigerant gases? Not during the middle of the summer, you think that, but it's actually about March, April, March is when the big build goes. You have to generate a lot of product to fulfill the need over the summer, and come December, you don't need that much space. Well, if you're providing the space for yourself, you're paying for that space whether or not you use it. So the opportunities in your facility, as you grow, you may be able to convert that space to production, and you may be able to outsource.
Very good. Thank you, Robert. Greg, I got a question for you. Just
all the warehousemen are in the room are clapping.
talking again about commercial real estate, and you interface with a few of them out there, but what is the current commercial real estate situation in the Baton Rouge area?
Well, one of the relationships we have is with Wilson Warehouse, and several years back we found ourselves at the port. We have 500,000 feet of warehouse space. We are 232 miles inland from the Gulf of Mexico. So as the crow flies, we're about 100 miles. But to get to Baton Rouge, you've got to steam a ship through New Orleans and another 12 hours up to Baton Rouge. So we're at a little disadvantage as far as that goes compared to a coastal port. Now, Baton Rouge is not a bad place to be when the hurricane's bearing down on the coast either. Everybody wants to get to Baton Rouge. So anyway, we see the commercial real estate, what came on was we had this empty space available. We've taken a landlord role basically on our facilities where we go to the private sector. We depend on the private sector, third-party logistics, to come in, lease that space from us. We have to do it at a reasonable enough rate that you can come in and rent space from us and still make a margin on your portion of the business. Because most of the third-party logistics, what we find is they're handling a product for another customer. So in our case, Wilson's been at the port for quite a while. We've got a good relationship. We've seen the ebbs and flows at times. They pull completely out of the port, and our warehouses are empty. We don't advertise our warehouses out to the public to try and compete with the warehouse market. So our role's a little bit different. You know, the port's facilities are 60 years old. We've maintained them very well, but we're considered older type space as far as some of our facilities are not what you would build today in a truck warehouse that you would have the door levelers and things like that. We've got a kind of a moderate space. It's all sprinkled. It's got the necessary elements, but we are an older building. So what we've done, we try and keep the space priced to where we're not above the market or below the market. We've been taken to task by some of the realty companies by doing that as well. So if I said, oh, our warehouse is paid for, we'll lease it to you for $1 a foot. Well, next thing I hear is the warehouse guys going, hey, there's a guy down the road built a new warehouse. He needs $7 a foot. You're undercutting him. So we've dealt with those issues before. You wouldn't think that would be a problem, but it is. And, so we're a state-owned facility. The port is actually a political subdivision of the state, and we generate our own funds. So we've got to, make enough to keep the lights on, but we can't go out and use our facilities to compete with the private sector. So that's what we found. Our role at the port is to try and provide the facilities necessary. I've been at the port now for 43 years, and I've worked for the Port Authority for 21. And we've worked on some major projects there. And some of the things I work on take 5 years to come to fruition. It's hard to believe that you would even stay in the game and continue an effort like that. But we had a wood pellet facility that took us, we started working on that in 2010, and they opened the doors in 2016. And we now are exporting wood pellets from the port to the UK, which you wouldn't have thought that was possible, but it created a whole new industry in Louisiana and Mississippi that wasn't here before, and it resurrected some of the timber industry. So when you talk about what is your facility or asset, how can that be an advantage in the market? Those are some of the things that the port has been able to bring to the market to help get a business started, with this industry. Like, I don't know if you've crossed the bridge, you see the two domes there. That is what we store wood pellets in. We have the capacity to hold 80,000 tons of wood pellets, and one ship, we load 3 ships a month. One ship will load up to 62,000 tons. So we've got about 18,000 ton extra capacity there. So it's a timing issue. It is one of these just-in-time deliveries. We bring it all in by rail and truck. So we store that facility up 3 times a month, and we load ships out of it 3 times a month. So that's been a whole new sector, a whole new side of the industry that the port being an asset there was an outlet for them to export from Louisiana. So sometimes, everybody asks me, well, how you come across these things? It's just out networking, talking to people. I tell them we got the best marketing department they've ever had at the port. That's me. So, anyway, we just look for things to match up folks and see where we can get. We've got a lot of partners in the industry. We've got the railroads. We've got the trucking industry. We've probably got 500 trucks a day come in and out the port. We've got. That takes a certain level of security to keep that directed around the port. The port is they're regulated heavily by the Coast Guard. So we have a TWIC guard that you might see at some of the plants and but over-the-road truckers are not usually have to have the TWIC enforcement on them. So now we have to escort trucks into the port. So we've got some challenges with it, but we try, and one of the things we did early on was look at some of our domestic partners or some of the people in our backyard. How could you solve some of their issues with using port assets? And so we serve, while we do a lot of importing and exporting, we serve a domestic market as well at the port. So that's been a little different from somewhere you might see in LA, Long Beach or something.
All right, great, thank you. Robert, does this correspond with what you're seeing in the commercial market? What's going on with you guys?
So, leading up to this event, we had a few webinars, had 4 webinars, and the first one had to do warehouse space, and the theme of the webinar was, where do I put my stuff? And when I was doing some research, Lauren Buckholtz is a realtor, commercial realtor, and so she was my source for this information. She's unable to attend. And I said, Lauren, what's the commercial space look like? And she said, well, this was during the pandemic, right? So we're in early 21 when I did this. So we had a year of pandemic. And you may have read some articles that commercial real estate was in the tank, except one sector, warehousing. Now, what changed? Well, Amazon. Right? People started ordering online because they couldn't go to the store. The stores were closed. And so they started ordering online, and all of a sudden we had to have a lot more inventory around, and not in the stores, but prepared for shipping. And so the commercial real estate market was booming. Now, realtors like it when they say booming. Users think that means that, you know, it's going to cost a little bit more. So warehouse space is tight. You know, IWLA may have been around for 130 years, 132. Wilson Warehouse has been here for 60 years in the Baton Rouge area. And I've been with the company for 45 years. And I can tell you that I don't ever remember a time when Baton Rouge had a bunch of space available, at least not in the large market for space. Now, if you drive around in Houston, it used to be, I haven't been scoping out business contacts. We used to drive through warehouse aprons, looking in their doors, trying to write down the names of their customers so we could go steal them when we were in Houston. But there was a lot of space in Houston, and a lot of spec warehouses in Houston. And there hasn't been that in Baton Rouge. Now, when Industrialplex opened, you may remember there was a lot of business, commercial space available. There hasn't been a lot of on-spec space in Baton Rouge. And so they really only develop if they have a customer. And we have some development people in the room, and I think they'll back me up on that. They don't do spec warehouses as much in this market, which means, from my entire experience, the market has been tight. It's been hard to get warehousing space. And what's going to happen when they level Cortana and make a big warehouse there? Well, you say, well, that's all new space. But there's also going to be a fair amount of feeder industries for that. So just in time means just in case for your provider, right? And so the providers for that warehouse are going to want to put a product in Baton Rouge so that they can provide the shipping point with product. And so there's going to be even more squeeze on commercial space, I think, coming in the future. So where does that leave you if you are the growing business? Well, you can compete. You can get out there now. Lock down the space. You may not need it right now, and you're going to have to pay for it, but you need to lock it down now. Or an alternative is to partner with a third-party provider. Once again, that problem becomes a third-party provider's problem. They manage the space and they manage your product. So as you grow, you don't have to get out of the space you're in, but when you need overflow space, consider that third-party provider, because he can accommodate you without you having to go out and enter into the real estate market.
Very good. Thank you. Bonnie, this is a question for you. And you touched this a little bit, and maybe Greg, what's going on in the export-import market?
Sure. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I know I have a bunch of crazy letters after my name there. So I'm a licensed customs broker, and I help companies with their import and export trade compliance programs. So somebody today was telling me a story about how they had a client who shipped some lumber, I believe it was, to China, and just lost everything on that shipment because they didn't do it legally, right? They didn't fill out all the paperwork. They didn't, do any of that kind of stuff. So that's what I do. I help you get, you can put anything on a ship and ship it anywhere you want, right? And it'll get there, but it may not ever be unloaded. It may be destroyed as soon as it's unloaded. If you don't have the right paperwork, you don't have the right, or you might lose your butt in duty too. So that's where I come into play. So as far as what's going on in the import and export world, we're seeing a lot of increase in enforcement. So with a new administration, anytime you have a new president, everything changes in my world, because new presidents, no matter whether you like them or not, they all have new ideas about what should happen in the world of global trade. President Trump, you might remember, started a trade war on China and increased duties on goods coming from China upwards of an extra 25%. So we're still seeing the ramifications of that. Those are called Section 301 duties. And so right now we're in a comment period where you can try to get your exclusions extended. So what that means is you could initially, if your good was originally at a 5% duty, well, now Trump says, no, we're going to add a 25% on top of that. Now you're at 30% duty. You can imagine what that does to your bottom line, right? Well, a few years ago, you were able to apply for an exclusion from that duty for certain reasons. Well, now those exclusions are expiring and people are freaking out, right? Because they're going to have to start paying this 30%. So that's the period that we're in right now. So we're seeing a lot of increased scrutiny on that, those Section 301 duties. Also, like I was talking about the enforcement, a CF-28 is the name of the form that you receive from Customs if they have a question about something. So if any of you in the room ever receive anything from Customs, I'm going to give you my card. Call me, okay? If you don't respond to these questions within 30 days, you will have some fines and penalties. Okay, so some things will happen. A question from Customs is never a question. Okay, it's a demand. And if you don't respond, that's a big problem. And so you definitely want to take those seriously, even if they look innocuous. So we're seeing a big increase in those CF-28s coming through. I have one client who received 10 last week. Okay, and that's a huge increase. In the past, we may have seen 10 a year. So lots of increased scrutiny on that. Also, there's a certain thing where there's a provision where you can export something that needs to be repaired or reworked in some way. So you might export it for that, like for something to be fixed, or just it's going to be used overseas temporarily, like a tool, and then they're gonna send it back to you. Well, when they send it back to you, anytime something comes into the US, you have to pay duty on it, right? Well, there's a provision that if this thing was only overseas for a little while and now it's coming back, you can file this, what's called a Chapter 98 provision, to not have to pay duty. Well, now a lot of people were using that just, yeah, I was only over there temporarily, when it had really been overseas for like 30 years, right? Well, that's not temporary. So now Customs is really cracking down on that and making sure you have all the right paperwork filed that you need to have to prove that it was only over temporarily and so on. Basically, people are evading duty. And so the government is kind of broke right now, right? And trying to get some money back. And so the way they're doing it is by looking at these imports and also at exports. The main focus for Customs right now is forced labor, especially in certain regions of China. So you need to be very careful if your company is ordering, say, raw materials or whatever you're ordering, especially from China. You want to pay close attention to those forced labor provisions. Otherwise, your goods will get stopped at the port and will not arrive to you. Okay, so those are kind of the things I'm seeing, the focus areas that are happening right now in the import world. In the export world, which I know a lot of you guys are worried about, what I find fascinating, I went to a conference recently where the Bureau of Industry and Security was speaking about what they're looking at as far as new things that require an export license. And the emerging technology sector that they're looking at is just fascinating. I mean, there are people, we're all familiar with 3D printing being used in manufacturing at this point, but are you familiar with 3D printing of food? That to me was fascinating. How are you 3D printing a steak? I'm not sure I personally want to eat that steak, but you know, there's all kinds of new robotic applications happening, new weaponry things that you and I have never heard of, but of course the Bureau of Industry and Security is very tuned into these things. So all of these things are what BIS is focusing on, is mostly the technology, emerging technology sector, and you know, we're always worried about, especially in the middle of a pandemic, airborne pathogens and, you know, all of these. I focus a lot on medical devices, and there's some fascinating things going on in the world of medical devices. I was telling someone earlier that I have a client who has basically found a cure for dementia, and so I'm working with them closely on getting their clinical trials finished. And so anytime you guys hear anything from the FDA, the CDC, the EPA, any of these what we call partner government agencies, you definitely want to reach out and make sure that you're responding to whatever they're asking you for. Otherwise, fines and penalties can be. I had a client last week who paid $4.5 million in fines to Customs. This is weekly for me. This happens all the time. So please reach out before it's too late.
Okay. We're running a little short on time, so I'm going to go to a zinger question. And One of the things, and the question is, you know, I need help with finding warehousing. I need help with my warehousing operation. You know, what do I look for if I'm interested in going to a 3PL warehouse? And before you answer that, I'll just tell you, in our ratings course, we have 65 questions that we ask customers so that we get the right answers. And most of the time, we don't get the right answers. But at least you've got it recorded as to what the customer told they were expecting from your operation as to what you can provide. And so it's important that you have that so that when you have to formulate a change order, you have it documented. So what kind of questions should I be asking a 3PL if I'm thinking of going that direction, Robert?
I thought the question might be for me, so I set up. You know, I have been extolling the values of outsourcing your logistics, but there's also a little bit of concern, maybe even fear on your part, because this company is the last one to see your product before it goes to your customer. At Wilson Warehouse, one of our themes is that we are stewards of goods and community. We are stewards of your goods. It's our job to deliver those goods to your customer in pristine order the way you asked to do it. And you might think, you know, we're ISO certified, and so we have a group of standards that we follow. And when I go to the lean meetings with our folks, I say, look, it's a standardization of procedure is one of the lean concepts, and every order is the same except where it's different, right? Every customer is the same except where they're different. They have different requirements, they have different needs, not just their product, but their end customers, their shipping requirements. We do later today, we're going to have a little case study, and we spend a lot of time in that case study on the onboarding process for a new customer. Who gets involved? Well, IT, operations, accounting. Everybody needs to be in on those initial meetings so that we bring a successful onboarding process. So as you look, first of all, to get a list, go to the IWLA.com website when you're looking for space, looking for a provider. That's a good lead. There's the Southeastern Warehouse Association. If you're in Texas, there's the Texas Warehouse Association. These are all providers in the area. But as you start to interact with them, the questions they ask should make you feel a little bit better about the process. You know, if they tell you just send it, it's all good, then you should be a little bit worried. You know, when we were in Houston, we had an ad in the Yellow Pages, and we got one customer from that ad. It was 2 truckloads, and they disappeared. And then we saw the name on the order, so we called the manufacturer and we said, "Hey, we got your product. We got 2 truckloads of your product in our warehouse. What do you want to do with it?" And they said, "Well, we're sending it to the police. It's stolen." You know, so that's what we get, if you just take a customer without a lot of due diligence. So as you look to find a provider, you want to have a good fit. Do they care about your product as much as you care about your product? Are they listening to your needs? Will they adapt their procedures to what you need? Because in the end, both sides want to be successful.
Very good. That brings us to our time. We need to end right here. We got other questions. If you have other questions and you want to drill down further, please look them up at the break times, et cetera, and make sure that you get your questions answered. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Pam.